Shalom Aleichem. Look at the Sicha, volume 28. The Sicha of Pinchas, Sicha number 2, Sicha base, Rashi Sicha, about the Karbonos in our Torah portion. The Torah gives us the list of the Karbonos, of the daily sacrifices brought in the Holy Temple. What's called the Carbon Tamid, the daily constant offering, one in the morning, one at night. And then the Torah continues with the offerings of Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh, and then all the holidays in order around the year, starting with Pesach, and then Shavuos and Sukkot, Shmini Atzeres. So there's a Rashi right at the beginning of that section, where the Torah begins, Shabbos B'nai Yisrael, instruct the children of Israel to bring my offerings. This is referring to the daily offerings. It's the first offering that's listed. And the language is, Karbani lachmi liishai, my sacrifice, my bread, etc. Tishmanu, they should be careful to guard it. Lahaktibli, to offer it to me. Bimboado, in its time. That's the verse. That's the verse. And then the next verse continues. And what is its time? One lamb in the morning and one lamb in the afternoon, and it gives you all the laws of the daily offering before it moves on to Shabbos and holidays and Rosh Chodesh, etc. There's a Rashi on that verse, and Rashi says on the word b'moado, and its time, each day is a set time for the Tamid, for the daily constant offering. And the Rebbe's question is a very simple, basic question. Well, obviously, each day is the time, of course, as it says in the next verse, twice daily. You should bring it. So twice daily is its time. So what is Rashi contributing? He should have left it alone. Should have said nothing. So the Mizrahi, one of the commentaries on Rashi, is bothered by the same problem that the Rebbe is bothered by. What is Rashi gaining? And the Mizrahi says Rashi is really saying something different than what he seems to be saying. He's saying something that he said in a different Rashi in Parsha Ba'aloscha a few weeks ago, where it speaks about the Carbon Pesach, the Paschal Lamb. And over there too, the Torah employs the word b'moado. That the commandment was given to the Jews. But Yasu b'nei Yisrael, they should bring the sacrifice of the Carbon Pesach in its time. And Rashi says, what does it mean at its time? Of course we know what time, but the Torah gives us the date. Says Rashi, in its time, even if impurity. Normally you have to be pure to bring sacrifices, but being this is so important, and it's a communal thing, etc., and it has to happen at that time. So imagine, let's assume all the Kohens are impure, or the entire Jewish people are impure, you bring it even in impurity. That's what Rashi says there. Says the Mizrahi, that's what Rashi means here. He didn't quite say it, but that's what it means. Because otherwise, what's he saying? Each time is a set time. That's what the verse says. And it's time. Like, what did Rashi do? We just paraphrased it. Says the Mizrahi, that's what he means. Each day is a set time, and therefore you bring it on that day, even in impurity. Just like Rashi says there. The Rebbe doesn't accept that that's what Rashi meant, because Rashi would have stated it clearly. Rashi's teaching a child who's 5 years old, and he doesn't keep him guessing. And he would say, he could have said it very easy. It would have been a much shorter Rashi. It's two words, b'moado af betuma. Bring it in its time, even in impurity. Why would he give this whole roundabout? So we're back to the problem. What does Rashi gain by this entry? The Even Ezra is a commentary, not on Rashi, but a commentary on the Torah. He too, like Rashi, is bothered what this word means. Bring it in its time. It's quite obvious. The Torah is going to give its time in a minute, the next verse. One in the morning, one in the night. So the Even Ezra says that this word is teaching us in its time. It shouldn't be before dawn. It shouldn't be after sunset. The language of the Even Ezra is not before the morning, not after the night. So the Rebbe says, why did Rashi reject these two meanings? Why didn't he say what the Mizrahi says he's saying? Which would have been straightforward. There's a similar Rashi in Parshas Ba'aloscha on the same word, b'moado, but a Carbon Pesach. It means even in impurity. That would have been a straightforward meaning. Rashi doesn't say it. That would have been easy. Why does he have this whole roundabout thing that each day is this time? And if Rashi doesn't like that interpretation, for whatever reason, he feels this is different than Ba'aloscha, so why doesn't he do the interpretation of the Even Ezra? Why does the Torah say you should bring it in its time? When we know what the time is, it's going to say it in a second. Aha! To teach us that what? To teach us the time frame. Not before dawn, not after sunset. Why doesn't Rashi take either one of these? It would have been very straightforward. Says the Rebbe, there's a fundamental difference. The Sicha has a number of aha moments, a number of the Rebbe is saying, don't you see? And this, I think, is one of them. There's two Rashis in the Torah that have that heading, B'moado. One in Ba'aloscha, one is here. But Rashi's bothered by different problems in both places. They're not the same. In Ba'aloscha, Rashi's bothered by the fact that it's an extra word. It's an extra word. Torah says you should bring the Paschal Lamb in its time, and then it continues right away, immediately, on the 14th of Nisan. So that's a duplication, and it's just extra. We know what the word means at its time. But why are you saying it twice? It's as if the Torah would have said, bring the Paschal Lamb on the 14th of Nisan. On the 14th of Nisan. So you have a superfluous word. The Torah principle is that when we have an extra word, an extra thing, we have a limud, we have a derivation. Aha, it's teaching us an inclusion, that even in impurity, you bring it. That's what the Ba'aloscha thing is. That's what was bothering Rashi, and that's how he settles it. Based on the Talmud, oral Torah, etc. However, here, Rashi's bothered by another problem. He's not so much bothered by the fact that it's extra. First of all, the fact that it's extra doesn't jump off the page that much, because in this case, it does not say immediately thereafter the date. Like over there, it says, bring it on its time, the 14th of Nisan, literally without a break. Here it says in one verse, bring it on its time, and the following verse, halfway through the verse, it tells you to bring it every day. So it's not so much about a redundancy. It's about a different problem, but you might say a more pressing problem. What does the word even mean? Not that the word is extra. What does it mean to tell me to bring a daily offering which is constant in its time? When it's constant, it means it has no time. The word doesn't have a meaning. That's what's bothering Rashi. And that precludes both of the above commentaries, you see. That's why Rashi doesn't accept either one of those commentaries, because when it says in the Torah the word b'moado, it means in its set time. This is a word that's used elsewhere when Hashem says to Moshe, I will meet you lamoed in a set time, a meeting time, an established time. When you're talking about something that's happening on a daily basis, what do you mean in the special established time? There isn't an established time. It's every day. So it seems to be a problem on the pshat level that the Torah should employ a word b'moado, which generally means an established time, a special time. It's not special, it's regular. It's a regular daily offering. And this precludes both number one and number two. It precludes the Mizrahi, because the Mizrahi is a redundancy. If there's a redundancy of a teaching, you have an extra word, you have an extra inclusion. It's not extra, we don't even know what it means. It also precludes the meaning of the Even Ezra. Not before dawn, not after sunset. Rabbi really says three reasons why the Even Ezra doesn't work. Most fundamental is that, again, Rashi is introducing that in the Torah, b'moado, we have to understand what it means. And nominally, whenever the Torah uses that word, moado, la moed, that Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, it means I'm establishing a special time. It's like our special day, our special time. And it's a strange thing to say that about something that happens all the time. And therefore, that word has to denote the indication of what that time is. What's that special time? Not some nuanced law of when that time begins and when that time ends. You know, the halachic minutia, like the Even Ezra would say, well, it's teaching us not before dawn, not after this. We learned that from other places in the Torah. And that's a halacha, but that's a nuanced detail. When the Torah says b'moado, as we have that kind of verbiage throughout the Torah, when Hashem makes a time for a mitzvah, a time for a meeting, or a place for it means that's the special time, not the nuanced limitations to that time. The Even Ezra doesn't work for the Rebbe as what Rashi could have said. And the Rebbe gives two or more reasons why the Even Ezra is not what Rashi would not say what the Even Ezra says. Because if this verse, like the Even Ezra would have it, is here only to tell us, you know, the limitation of the time, the nuanced law, don't do it before 5 o'clock, don't do it after 6 o'clock, then it should have come in two verses. After the Torah tells us in the next two verses, you should bring it twice daily, once in the morning, once at night, it makes sense to say, and by the way, not too early, not too late. But it doesn't make sense that you're going to tell me the detailed, nuanced law, not too early, not too late. I don't even know yet when that law kicks in. First give me the time frame, then give me the nuanced limitations. So that's reason 2 why the Rebbe doesn't, why the Rebbe argues Rashi does not say like the Even Ezra. And reason 3 is that this law that the Even Ezra cites, you can't bring offerings before dawn and after sunset. That's not only true about the daily offerings, it's true about every single offering. It's a true law, but it's a law across the board. It's not related to the carbon tumah, to the daily offering, and therefore that can't be what the Torah is teaching us here. Says the Rebbe, so therefore Rashi is bothered. What does the verse mean? Not why is there an extra word, but what does the word mean? What does it mean to argue that an offering which is constant and has no interruption, it's every single day, is in its special time? The word has no meaning. And don't tell me he's teaching me the limitation of that time and some nuanced law. We don't even know the time yet. And don't tell me that it's here to include detail that if you're impure, that's lumdus. That's detailed additions to the law. But what does the word mean? You can tell me when there's an extra word, you tell me what it's teaching you. But the word has to make sense. That's what's bothering Rashi. Says the Rebbe, that's why Rashi comes along and creates an innovation, according to the Rebbe. It's the Rebbe's innovation too. This is another aha. And that is that Rashi is teaching us, you should know the daily offering every single day is its time. Even though the Torah says, I'm giving you a mitzvah to bring a constant offering. You should bring an offering every day, constant. The language is Shnaim Layom Tamid. Twice a day, always, constant. So one might think that this offering doesn't really have a time. It's limitless. It has no time. It's always. All other offerings have a time. You bring it on Shabbos, you bring it on Rosh Chodesh, you bring it on Pesach, you bring it on this. But the Tamid offering is Tamid. It's always, every day. Says Rashi, I want you to know it's true that it's every day. But really, it's not because it has no time, but because every day is its time. It really is a daily offering. The same way the Pesach offering is Pesach, the Shabbos offering is Shabbos, the daily offering is daily. If I'm bringing an offering today, Tesvav Tammuz, it's the offering of Tesvav Tammuz. It's not the offering of every day. Every day is its time. That's how the Rebbe reads what Rashi wants, which is pretty straightforward, the reading of Rashi. Right? Look at the top of the screen. In its time, each day is its time. Very profound, even as it's like simple. Rashi says it. The question, though, is what's the relevance? Okay, that sounds like that's what Rashi's saying. But what's the relevance? What's the difference? If I look at the daily offering as an offering that has no limited time, just bring it every day, twice a day, but it doesn't have a specific time, it's every day. Or I look at it, no, it's every day's offering. It belongs to that day. I mean, it's a very nice concept, but what's the relevance? What's the difference? It's 6.5 a dozen. So the Rebbe says, let me tell you what the relevance might be. What the relevance might be. Says the Rebbe, says the Rebbe's going to give 2 approaches to this problem. We now know what I tried to do in the next screen is give us the recap of what we learned so far. So far we know we have a Rashi that says that in its time means each day is its time. And we had a problem what that means. And the Rebbe says what Rashi means is that the constant offering has an appointed time each day. It's not that it has no time. It has a time. Today is today's offering. But the question is, how is that relevant? So what's the practicality? Who cares? So the Rebbe says there is a relevance in law, if you will, if we look at this offering as today's offering. And that is to teach us the law of the makeup requirement of the daily offerings. By way of introduction, is there makeup for offerings if you miss them, or is there not? So bottom line is that all communal offerings do not have makeups. There is a concept of makeup offerings for what's called carbon yachid, individual offering. So for example, If I'm supposed to bring an offering, the Jew would have to bring Karbi Chagiga, a holiday offering, what have you, and he missed it on the first day of the Yontif, he can bring it on the next day. A person's private offering can be made up for. But the communal offerings, the daily offerings, the Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, the holidays that were brought, the Musaf offerings, etc., they have to be brought that day. If they're not brought that day, it's over. You can't make it up. This is true also like on the holidays, at Pesach, all 7 days there were offerings. Sukkot, all the different days, right? We read it in our Musaf on Sukkot, every day a different number of offerings. What if you forgot you didn't do it? You know, there's supposed to be 13 bulls on the first day of Sukkot and 12 on the second. What if you missed the first day? Do you bring 25 on the second? No, it's done. Let's assume they didn't miss it, but if it happened and you missed the 13 on the first day, there's no makeup. That's the rule. That's the halacha. But what's the source of this halacha? So the Rebbe is going to point out to us, we know from Torah and from Rashi that Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, and festivals have no make-up offerings. You cannot make it up. I missed this Shabbos, I can't bring it next week. Ditto that for Rosh Chodesh or the holidays, because each one of those, the Torah makes a specific statement to preclude it. However, when it comes to the daily offering, there's no verse to preclude it. Nowhere does it say by the daily offering, you can only bring it now and not tomorrow. When it comes to Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh, as we're going to study together in a moment, each one has a verse of derivation. It's called a limud, a special verse of derivation to hammer home the point. It's today's Shabbos offering. We're talking about the communal offerings. It's today's Rosh Chodesh. It's today's festival. You cannot make it up. If the day passes, goodbye. But it doesn't say anything about the daily offering. What if the community missed the daily offering? Whatever, they slept late, or there was a problem, or there was no offerings available. Do they make it up the next day, or do they not? And the Rebbe is going to give two approaches. The Rebbe wants to argue that the concept of B'moado, what is Rashi saying? In its time, meaning to say every day is its time. And if you miss this day, there's no tomorrow. So therefore, the B'moado, the fact that today is the day of that sacrifice. It's not just that it has no time. It has a time today. It teaches me the law of makeup requirement of daily offering, that there is no such thing as a makeup requiring. Why do I need that verse to teach it to me by the daily offering? Because by all the other offerings, I have specific verses teaching it. By the daily offering, there isn't such a verse, and therefore it seems to be up for grabs. It seems that it's not clear whether the daily offering has a makeup or not. If they missed it one day, should they make it up the next day? Or if they missed a couple of days, should they make them up or not? There isn't clarity about it. Whereas Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh and festivals, as you can see in the middle of the screen, there is explicit instruction in the Gemara, and Rashi quotes it, that no, you missed it, you missed it. What about daily offering? I don't know. So the Rebbe is going to argue in approach number one that this word B'moado teaches that this is the time for this sacrifice, and therefore there's no makeup. If you missed it, you missed it. But let's go through this. Here are the verses of derivation. Regarding Shabbos, it says, this is in our section, that the offering of each Shabbos should be brought on its Shabbos, unquote, says Rashi. One might assume if I miss one Shabbos, I should bring two the next Shabbos. That's logical. I, meaning the community, says the Torah, its day has passed, its offering is cancelled. This is a famous quote, of Arizmane, Bottle Karbone, the day has passed, the offering is cancelled. And where do we derive it from? A special verse, Olas Shabbos b'Shabbato, the offering of Shabbos on its Shabbos. Then we find the Rosh Chodesh. The verse says, Olas Chodesh b'Chodshay, a similar language. The offering of each month is in its month, says Rashi. The day passed, the offering's canceled. If you miss bringing an offering of Rosh Chodesh Cheshvan, you don't bring two on Rosh Chodesh Kislev. It's too bad. It's over. And then it says also about the festivals. This is in the portion of Emor and Vayikra. The language is that what Vayom B'Yomo, the language is over there, that each of the festival offerings is on its day. So Rashi there pipes up again with a similar language. If the day passed, the offering is cancelled. We have three Rashis in the Torah saying this, because there's three laws. One is precluding this make-up date for Shabbos, one for Rosh Chodesh, one for festivals. What about daily offerings? We don't have clear instructions. It remains curious. It's up for grabs. Do daily offerings have a makeup? You're running the temple, and they missed it. God forbid. I don't know. Imagine a scenario that they couldn't bring it, or they didn't bring it, or whatever it is. Maybe the temple was shut down because of the Greeks, and then they reopened it. Should they bring makeup for the days they missed? I don't know. So far from all the verses which Rashi quotes, which is in the middle of the screen, you only know that there's no makeup for Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, and festivals. What about daily? Says the Rebbe that Rashi is teaching us that it doesn't need a verse to give it derivation, because it's become obvious from the word b'moado. It can become obvious from the word b'moado. Listen to this. This is beautiful stuff. How does it become so obvious from the word b'moado? B'moado, Rashi teaches us that the carbon, the sacrifice of today, belongs to today. I'm using today as an example. Today is Tesvav Tammuz when I'm recording this, that the offering, the daily offerings, morning and night of Tesvav Tammuz, they're not just daily offerings for every day. They're the offerings of Tesvav Tammuz. That's what Rashi is teaching us from the word b'moado. The daily offering, that's its day. So therefore, what do you mean you're going to make it up? When are you going to make it up? There's never again going to be a Tesvav Tammuz of Tavshin Pei Hey. When you're talking about Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh and festivals, the Torah has to give us a verse by each one to say, if you missed it, there's no makeup, because I would think there is. I missed this Shabbos, I'll bring a next Shabbos. I missed this Rosh Chodesh, I'll bring a next Rosh Chodesh. I missed this Pesach, I'll bring it Shavuos, or I'll bring it next Pesach, or I'll bring it the second day Pesach. Because, there's makeups, theoretically, and therefore the Torah gives a special verse to say, oh no, don't do it. You missed this Shabbos, you can't make it up. But when it comes to the daily offering, since Rashi teaches that the Talmud offering belongs to today, it's the offering of today. There will never again be a today. So when are you going to make it up? The logic was that maybe Shabbos, you missed the offering, you could bring a next Shabbos. You should miss Rosh Chodesh, you bring next Rosh Chodesh. And therefore the Torah has to teach us a special limud, a special preclusion with all the verses that are on the screen. But when it comes to daily offerings, again, if you hold the daily offerings just every single day, you missed a day, so yeah, bring it tomorrow. But if you hold the daily offering belongs to today, there's never going to be another today. So sweet, so special. That's how the Rebbe is reading the Rashi, and therefore the Rebbe says that might be the relevance. Rashi is teaching us that Talmud, daily offering, constant, doesn't just mean constant, that there's no limitation, it's every day. Yes, it's every day, but each day one at a time. And therefore today's offering belongs to today. Therefore there's no question that you cannot have a makeup. You cannot have a requirement of a makeup, because there'll never again be today. So that's approach number one that the Rebbe gives. What's the relevance of this Rashi? To teach us that daily offerings have no makeup requirement, even though there isn't a verse to preclude it, much as there is by Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, and festivals. There's no need for such a verse, because the never again will be a today. And the offering belongs to today, not to every day. And therefore it's obvious. And that's the first approach of the Rebbe. It's very sweet, and it's worth, in and of itself, to take that in. That's a ha from the Rebbe. But then the Rebbe comes and upends it and says, no, it can't be the final explanation. Says the Rebbe, I'll tell you why. It's all nice and good. Whoops. It's all nice and good. This b'moado seems to say that today is the only day of the offering, so therefore there's no today again to make it up. But if you look at the whole chapter, even though nominally b'moado is referring to the first offering on the list, the daily offering, but really it's part of the headline of the entire chapter. And therefore it's really a reference to all the sacrifices. Command the children of Israel about my bread, my fire, my offering, that they should bring to me in its time. Didn't say which offering. It's a headline for all the offerings. And the next verse is that there's going to be a daily offering, twice a day. And it gives all the details, and then it goes on to Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh and Pesach, etc., etc. But this verse really, even though you might argue that nominally it's more directed for the daily offering, but the truth is it's a heading for the entire section. So all the offerings really have the same parameter, that you might say that the day that they're brought belongs to that day. So now this means that whatever we said before about the daily offering, that it's not just every day, but each day on its own. So if that offering belongs to Tesvav Tammuz, of course there's no question about a makeup. There never again will be a Tesvav Tammuz Tavshin Pei Hey. Guess what, says the Rebbe? If this word B'Moado refers to the entire chapter, that's true about every offering, Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, and festivals too. Let's assume Shabbos as an example. Now, since it says the word B'Moado means this is the time for the offering. So it's not that when you bring the Shabbos offering, it's just because it's the Shabbos. It's this Shabbos. Never again will there be this Shabbos. This is not written in detail in the Sicha, but you have to study it to get it. You can't have it both ways. You can't tell him B'Moado is celebrated by Rashi to point out the power of the day, that even something that happens every day or every week or every Shabbos, it's not every day, it's this day. But if B'Moado is a heading for the entire chapter, that same, let's call it individual attention, individual establishment for the day applies to the individuality of that Shabbos and that Rosh Chodesh and that particular day of Pesach, Shavuot, Sukkot, etc. And therefore, heck, we don't need any of the derivations, the verses of derivation on the screen. If the logic is that if something has a certain date for the offering, there's no tomorrow. So of course you can't make it up. That was the logic the Rebbe argued so powerfully why the Talmud offering does not need a verse of derivation to preclude its makeup. Because there isn't a tomorrow to preclude it. There will never again be a today. But now that we're saying B'Moado was a heading for the entire chapter, so the same principle should apply by everything. What's good for the gander is good for the goose. And therefore, the Shabbos offering is not just for every Shabbos, for this Shabbos. So, of course, there's no point in even considering making it up next Shabbos. And yet they do have derivation verses. So now we're really confused. So therefore, approach one is not going to fly, says the Rebbe. You can't tell me that the reason why Rashi is setting it up that B'Moado, that it's on this day, because that becomes a special day that never needs a makeup, because it's impossible. There is no other tomorrow. Whereas in the other holidays, Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, and festivals, there is a need for a preclusion for the makeup date with special verses. But since B'Moado includes all of them, so you shouldn't need any of the verses of derivation by all of them. And yet the Torah does give the verses of derivation by Shabbos, by Rosh Chodesh, by festivals, a special verse, a special derivation to preclude that there's no makeup. Even though it says B'Moado as a headline. Apparently that's not good enough. It needs a derivation verse. So the daily offering too should need one, and it doesn't have one. So maybe the daily offering does have a makeup date. So where does this leave us? Now we're back to the Rebbe's original question. What's the relevance of Rashi establishing that the daily offering, it's not just daily because it has no limit, it's every day, but each day it's like every day's individual offering. That's a nice idea, but what's the relevance? The relevance can't be that it doesn't have a makeup date, because there's no verse teaching us that preclusion. We have verses by Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh and festivals. We absolutely do not have a verse teaching it to us by the daily offering. And this word B'Moado is not strong enough to teach it to us by the daily offering, because if it was teaching it to us by the daily offering, it would suffice for all the other offerings. So what's going on? So the Rabbi now is going to present approach number 2. This becomes approach number 2. All right? We finished approach 1, but B'Moado is part of the introduction of all the offerings, and yet they all have derivation verses. So the Rebbe comes along with approach number 2. And here's where the Rebbe splits the hair. This is another huge aha in the Sicha. And the Rebbe is going to say like this. You see, there's 2 possible needs for a makeup, for a missed sacrifice. One is the obligation on the person, on the people, in this case, the Jewish people or the Kohanes or what have you, the community, the obligation on the people. The other is that you got to pay up. You made a commitment to offer it up, so you owe it to the temple. You owe the value. Either you owe the particular sacrifice if it was already set aside, or you owe its value. The monetary value is committed, and you got to make it up. There could be two different reasons why you have to make it up. This would be called in Talmudic language or Lumdisha language, analytical language, gavra and chefza, person or object. Is it about, there can be a requirement to make it up on the person's obligation. The Jewish people have an obligation to bring an offering, daily offering, a Shabbos offering, etc. Does that obligation continue to the next day if you missed it, or does it not? That's what I'm calling the make-up obligation on the people. And then there's a concept of the pay-up requirement. It's not an obligation on the people. Let's assume the people have no obligation. But the temple, the altar, Hashem, however you wish, was promised, was committed this value, this monetary value from the fund or what have you. You got to bring it. The same conversation could probably exist when someone gives his private offering. There's an obligation on the person, an obligation on the object or the value of the money that you committed. But here we're talking about the communal offerings. Says the Rebbe like this. The Rebbe is maintaining the principle that b'moado means that this day is unique. And this is true by all offerings. Because b'moado is written as a heading to the entire section. And we know what moado means. B'moado, as Rashi says, every day the offering is of that day. And therefore every offering only has one chance to have the obligation. And that's not only true for the daily offering, it's true for Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, etc. So why do we need a derivation verse for each of the others, Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, and the festivals? We could just learn it from the headline. The answer is this headline, B'moado, teaches us only about the make-up obligation on the person. We don't yet know about whether or not there's a pay-up obligation on the financial commitment that community owes to Hashem. So from B'moado, B'moado means, as Rashi states, this is true about all the offerings, daily, Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, and festivals. All the offerings that will follow. You want to know what the headline is? B'moado. They are special on that day, as Rashi says. Every day is the time for that day. Not just about the daily offerings, about Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, and festivals too. And therefore, when Torah says to the Jewish people, to the people, you have a requirement, an obligation to bring it, but there's no make-up obligation. How can there be? There will never again be this day. And therefore, regarding the gavra of the make-up obligation on the person, there's no need for any verses by any of these four categories of sacrifice. Daily, Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, festival. There's no need for any verses. The verse is there. B'moado. Bring it today. After today, there's never again a today. However, what about the pay-up requirement? The temple, the Jewish people, the community has a pledge, a financial pledge, if you will, or a sacrificial pledge, that the altar, Hashem, is going to get X value. And it was missed. So true, you can't tell me that I have to bring the obligation of this offering because my obligation was for that day and that day's gone, but I still owe the money. Arguably, says the Rebbe, it's regarding this latter obligation conversation, the chefza, the pay-up requirement, that there is the derivation of all the verses of derivation. That Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, and festival, there's a special verse. And the verse teaches us a derivation that we would otherwise not know. What is it? As the language is in all three of those Rashis. Avar zmano batal karbono. The time has passed. The sacrifice is canceled. It doesn't speak about the obligation to the person. That was the gavra. That was the part that was precluded just from b'moado. We're now talking about the chefza, the sacrifices. The sacrifice commitment still hold. You have to pay it out or bring it, what have you, if the animal is alive, or else its value from the coffers of the temple. And the answer is no. No, no, and no, by Shabbos, festivals, and Rosh Chodesh. And why? Because the Torah goes to the trouble of delineating three special verses of derivation, which we just studied together, teaching us, no, the sacrifice of Shabbos is on Shabbos. The sacrifice of Rosh Chodesh, there isn't the makeup. Batal zmani batal karbon, avar zmani batal karboni. The time passed, the sacrifice is canceled. The emphasis, says the Rebbe, is on the sacrifice, not on the person's mitzvah. Person's mitzvah doesn't exist, that's obvious. But even the sacrifice is canceled, even the chefza, even there's no monetary or sacrificial commitment that stands. It's done. And for that you need the derivations. But more, there wouldn't be enough to preclude the obligation of the makeup on the level of the chefza, of the pay-up requirement. Says the Rebbe, but the daily offering, possibly there is makeup. The Rebbe says possibly, but the Rebbe says there isn't a verse to teach us that. That if in the Holy Temple, for whatever reason, they miss bringing an offering on a certain day or a few days, they probably should make it up. Not because there's a requirement on the people. Because remember, that requirement is for that day, and it never passes along. But there's a requirement on the financial commitment. The Jewish people have a commitment every day to spend, let's call it $50 on the carbon talmud, and now they owe $50 to Hashem. So when they have time and they have the money, they have to make it all up. Why not? Takes broad shoulders of the Rebbe to say that. The Rebbe puts in a footnote that if you read Rambam carefully, it seems that Rambam is even hinting to such a legal possibility. But the Rebbe is not learning over here halacha. He's learning from a Rashi perspective that therefore now we understand the whole story. It's a little nuance to get this in the Sicha, but this is what's happening. So what do we have? Let's recap it. We have a verse that says, bring the daily offering. Bring it in its time. We have a Rashi that says its time means that every day's offering, that's the day. It's not just every day, that day. Says the Rebbe, what's the relevance? So the Rebbe offers approach one. But the relevance is that the daily offering has no makeup requirement because it's that day. And that's why it doesn't need a verse of derivation, just like the other type of offering, Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, and festivals do. But the Rebbe does not accept that because the word b'moado is a headline. It applies to all the offerings. And therefore, if it's good for the daily, it's also good for the others. Oops. So the Rebbe therefore maintains approach number two. B'moado does say that every offering, not just the daily, but Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, and festival, it belongs to that day, not just the holiday. So for example, the offering in the temple that's brought for Shabbos is for that Shabbos, and it's for that particular day of the holiday, etc. And therefore, of course, there's no obligation to make it up. How do you know? Just from the word b'moado. The reason why we need the verses of derivation by Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, and festival is because we're referring to the chefza, the requirement, the financial, if you will, requirement of the temple staff, of the Jewish people. And there could be room for makeup, notwithstanding the b'moado. Yes, it's no longer the day, so therefore you can't tell the Jew that the Jew is obligated to bring it. But there was a commitment. You got to pay it out. Maybe. And therefore the Torah gives verses for each of those three, Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, and festivals, and it goes to the trouble to say, nope, if it's past, there's no more sacrifice. There's no more sacrifice. That's the language. That's a chefza language. It's a language on the object, on the financial or the object. Maybe the animal was actually already designated. You have to bring it. Nope, it's done. Whereas a daily offering, we do not have any derivation. And says the Rebbe, it's possible that from here we will come out that the daily offering does have a makeup, at least for the financial or the obligation of the animal, even if not on the people. Says the Rebbe, this will make understood according to the way we left it. It explains a beautiful discrepancy in Rashi. Here's where I took the Sicha out of order. Oizai in chapter 7 of the Sicha complicates the Sicha. So I took it out and now I'm putting it back. It was put in the middle to lay the groundwork for the case that Rebbe is going to make. But to make it clear, I first made the case. And now I'm telling you the groundwork or the support that the Rebbe's case is so sweet and so beautiful. This whole Gabra Chefza difference. This whole different types of obligation. And that it helps us understand discrepancy in the Rashi. We learned, as you see on the screen, we learned Rashis by Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, and festivals. And there's a special Rashi, a special verse, which teaches us a preclusion of a makeup. But through the Rebbe's teaching and telling us with the Rashi, that makeup is only regarding to the chefetzu. It's only regarding to the pay-up requirement. This whole conversation about Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh and festivals, and each one has a separate limud, a whole verse. Olas Shabbos b'Shabbato, the offering of each Shabbos on its Shabbos. Olas Chodesh b'Chodesh, these are extra words. The offering of each month in its month. By the festivals also, b'Moado, Dvar Yom b'Yomo, extra words. Teach us that there's no pay-up requirement, not make-up obligation. Make-up obligation, of course there isn't. But it's teaching us in additional that there is no pay-up requirements in terms of the financial commitment of the temple. That's the Rebbe's chiddush, that's what the Rebbe innovated, and that's where we are now. Now that we're here, says the Rebbe, I'm going to explain to you a beautiful Rashi discrepancy. Notice that when it comes to the Shabbos, when Rashi brings down that verse, that the offering of each Shabbos on its Shabbos, says Rashi, one might assume if I miss one Shabbos, I should bring two in the next Shabbos. Says the Torah, no, its day has passed, its offering is canceled. Pretty wordy. When it comes to Rosh Chodesh, Rashi just says, the day has passed, your offering is canceled. When it comes to festival, Rashi just says, the day has passed, your offering is canceled. Why here is he so wordy? One might assume if I miss this Shabbos, I bring the next Shabbos. Teaching us, the day has passed, your offering is canceled. All right, I don't have a problem with that, but do the same thing on Rosh Chodesh and on festivals. If I missed, you have to bring the offering of each Rosh Chodesh on that month. So Rashi should have said, one might assume if I missed one Rosh Chodesh, I should make up the next Rosh Chodesh. Comes to teach us, no, too late. The same thing by the festivals. One would assume I missed Pesach, I could bring it next Shavuos, like the next festival. The teachers, no. Why is Rashi so different? That by Shabbos he's so wordy and by the rest he's so concise. Regarding Rosh Chodesh, the Rebbe says it's not such a big problem because Rosh Chodesh follows Shabbos. They're both, if you look at, they're both chapter 28. One is 28 verse 10 and one is 28 verse 14. So they're one right after the other. So the Torah just finished saying, so Rashi just finished saying, one might assume you missed one Shabbos, you bring it the next Shabbos. So the Torah teaches us a lesson that no. So he doesn't have to repeat it 4 verses later for Rosh Chodesh. It's there. You didn't have a chance to forget it yet. So that follows. That makes sense. But the festival thing bothers the Rebbe, and it also bothers other commentaries. The festival thing is not right after. It's actually in the book of Vayikra. It's in the prior book. And over there, Rashi's very, very precise, very short. And he doesn't say, one might think if you missed this festival, you should bring it in the next festival. Well, why not? It's a nuance that bothers commentary on the Rashi. Why not spell out the same narrative for the festivals? It bothers the Rebbe, but it bothers other commentaries. Some of the commentaries answer that there's no need to spell it out by festivals. You know why? Because there's no rationale to say that if I forget it on Pesach, I should bring it on Shavuos. Nobody would say that. By Shabbos, one might think that. I missed Shabbos, I'll bring next Shabbos. But when it comes to festival, what are you going to say? I missed Pesach, I should bring it Shavuos? And therefore, there's no need for Rashi to spell that out. So what does Rashi mean if the day passed, the offering is canceled on Pesach itself? If they forgot to bring the communal offering or the Musaf offering on the first day Pesach, you don't have to bring it the second day. If they forgot the second day, you don't have to bring it the third day. So there's no need for it to say, if I missed the holiday, you missed that one day. Because if you actually missed the holiday, you would not even consider bringing it on the next holiday. That doesn't make sense from Shavuos, from Pesach to Shavuos, from Shavuos to Sukkot. No. And therefore, the commentaries are not bothered. The commentaries are sitting pretty. They're happy with the fact that Rashi does not spell out the same narrative by the festivals because it just doesn't make sense, such a consideration. It says, right, I accept what the commentaries say, that it wouldn't be rational and logical to say that if we miss this Pesach, we should bring it Shavuos. But what about if we miss this Pesach, we bring it next Pesach? Why is that not a possibility? And therefore, the same way Rashi goes to the trouble to delineate that if I miss this Shabbos, one might think I should bring it next Shabbos. He should have said it. If I miss this Pesach, one might think I bring it next Pesach. I missed this Shmini Atzeres. One might think the temple should bring it next Shmini Atzeres too. Why not? And why are the commentaries not even bothering to bring this up? They're only assuming that if you missed Pesach, you would recommend to bring it Shavuos, and that doesn't make any sense. But what about bringing it next Pesach? And the same thing is for miss Sukkot or bring it next Sukkot. Why isn't that a conversation, says the Rebbe. The Rebbe says, I'm going to tell you why. Because based on what we just learned, since we know that this whole section, all the verses that are in front of you, they're there to teach us the requirement of makeup on the pay-up aspect. There's no question that there is no makeup obligation on the Jewish people. The day is over, it's over. We know that from the Moado, like the first line on the screen. From the Gavra perspective, of course, there is no question. There's no need for all these derivative verses of derivation. However, the question is only in the pay-up requirement. Being in the temple coffers, there's delineated every single day a theoretical commitment of $50, my number, for the daily sacrifice. If you missed it tomorrow, you got to bring 100. And if it piles up, you got to keep piling it up. That's the conversation of the derivative verses that we're talking about. If that's the case, says the Rebbe, there can never be a conversation that if I missed the communal offering Pesach this year, I should bring it up next year. Because every year the coffers have a different collection. There was a fiscal year in the temple, to use a modern term. It was made up of the half shekels that the Jewish people gave, and those half shekels were put into one place. And there was a cutoff. The half shekels have to all be spent on the offerings, so the Jewish people are represented in all the offerings, the daily ones and the holidays, etc. And they belong to the budget, and also this is strict. It's not just about fiscal responsibility. It's about kedusha, about holiness. That all the funds that came from the half shekels of this year got to be spent on the sacrifices of this year, and that's it. When the year's over, it's a whole new coffers. You can't pass along money from the next. This is a principle in the laws of the shkalim, of the half shekel, and there's a cutoff. So since all of the derivations that we're looking at on the screen, every one of them is only regarding the fiscal, the financial pay-up requirement, of course it can't carry over from year to year. That would be a violation of the whole system of the holiness of the half shekels, that they only last for 1 year. And therefore, none of the commentaries suggest that there would even be such a possibility that this Pesach we would make up for next Pesach. Hence, Rashi doesn't say it. The Sicha is hard. You have to learn it slowly and take it in. But the innovations are many and amazing. I want to just suggest, so let's do the Rebbe's takeaway. In the spiritual sense, the Rebbe says that the sacrifices, their job was to bring Kedusha, to bring holiness, to bring the Shekhinah to the world. That's what they did. It says in the Likutei Torah, the sacrifices are called Hashem's bread. And what is bread? Bread keeps body and soul together. The sacrifices represent Hashem's bread, that it keeps the body, the world, and Hashem together. Hashem is the soul of the world. So in that sense, it's a metaphor of the bread. So bottom line is all the sacrifices, their job is to bring the Shekhinah to the world, bring holiness to the world. But there's a difference between daily offerings and the Shabbos and holiday offerings. Shabbos and holiday offerings bring a special holiness just for those days. That's why Shabbos is a special holy day. And Rosh Chodesh and Yom Tov, because they have special offerings. They bring a special holiness. But then there's the daily offerings. The daily offerings, they bring a presence of Hashem to every single day. One might think that's a lower level of holiness, because it's every day. It's equal for every day. Says the Rebbe, one can argue the opposite. That really the holiness that's brought to the world from the daily offerings is actually greater in an infinite way than the holiness that's brought to the world through the special Shabbos and festival offerings. How so? I mean, this is the Rebbe's signature style, that when the Rebbe's talking about a certain mitzvah, that mitzvah is the greatest ever. So obviously there's a certain edge to Shabbos and festivals. But here the Rebbe's, this Sicha is nominally about the daily offerings. And here the Rebbe is celebrating the daily. I'm going to tell us why the daily offerings, forget about it. They have a much greater level of divine revelation than the Shabbos and Yontif offerings. And the explanation is very simple. Divine revelation means a revelation of Hashem's infinite light. If it's light that can only be felt in the world on certain days, obviously its infinity is not complete. If it's infinite, it's going to be always. That's the definition of infinity. So obviously, whatever the meaning is going to be, if it's a special energy, kedusha, holiness, shekhinah, that's only come down to the world on Shabbos or certain days, in a sense, it's a limited light. It's a light that will not affect every day. Holy days, not every day. Whereas the offerings bring down the holiness of the shekhinah. Every day, tamid, that's a representation of Hashem's infinity. It's always. An example might be in the human body, that there's certain energies that are only certain parts of the body. Like most of our senses. You can see with the eyes, you can feel with the fingers, you can smell with the nose, you can taste with the tongue, you can walk with the feet. It's a wonderful energy, but it's limited. Because it's not everywhere. So vision is very powerful, but it's only in the eyes. It shows on a certain limitation. It has an address, it has a location. What about life itself? Life has no location. Person is alive and by definition must be from the top of his head to the bottom of his toes at all times. And God forbid there's any small, tiny part of that entire human being that's dead, that is not alive. It's a massive problem. God forbid amputated. You can't have a little death and you can't have a little life or a lot of life. It's got to be total because life is representative of Hashem, of infinity, and therefore by definition it's everywhere. Whereas all these other wonderful characteristics within a person, just to give an example, are limited to the particular parts of the body. So similarly, by way of example, you would say Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, holidays, even Yom Kippur. It's tremendous lights, but it's specific lights for specific things that they bring to the world. Daily offering, what does it bring? It brings life to the world, it brings infinity. It brings the light of Hashem that touches everything. There's no day that's excluded from it. Because it's beyond time. It's infinity. Comes along the Rebbe and says, that's nice. The daily offerings have an edge. They're bringing a light that's every single day. So by definition, it's an infinite light. But we would think that that light, therefore, does not permeate the actual time, being that it's unlimited, so it's beyond time. And that's why it's in every time. And therefore, it's wonderful, it's greater, but it doesn't really permeate the here and now, the time that we're in, because it's beyond time. It's like you can't have it both ways. If you want to say it's within time, which time is it? Is it Shabbos? Is it Yontif? You say no, it's infinite light. So it's beyond time. So it's at every day. Wonderful. It's a greater light, but it's less relevant in our realm of time because it's beyond time. Says the Rebbe, no. We have the cake and we want to eat it too. Yes, this light is beyond time, but it permeates the time. Where does the Rebbe get it from? He's reading that in the Rashi. Sometimes when you read something in the Sicha, you feel like you want to make a dance, or you want to make a kula, you want to do a somersault. This is a good moment for that. That the Sicha is saying, Rashi has wine of Torah. Rashi has hints, deep hints. Rashi's teaching us, right? Going back to the first beginning of the Sicha, that the daily offering is not just that it's daily because it has no time, it's always. No, every day is its time. You realize that's an oxymoron? Every day is its time? On the Hasidic level, it's loaded. The light of the daily offering is every day. It's limitless. It's beyond time. But every day that beyond time light arrives, it's in its time. It does permeate time. But it's light beyond time. The proof is that it's every day. Yeah, but Hashem can do it. He can marry the two. He's beyond time and time. The footnote compares this to the miracle, the oxymoron of the space of the ark, which took up no space. Of all the temple miracles, which proved Hashem's presence in the temple, the rain didn't put out the fire and there was no room for the people. Suddenly they had room to prostrate themselves, etc. The 10 different miracles. The most amazing miracle and the one that is represents the Shekhinah's, the battery pack of the Shekhinah, or if you will, the antenna of Hashem's presence, that's the ark. And why? It's explained because the ark's miracle is an oxymoron. that the makom ha'aron ein amida, the space of the ark, took up no space. On the one hand, the ark had to be measured, 2.5 cubits or 1.5 cubits. It had to be precise. You can't choose, it doesn't matter, it's beyond space. No, it has to be exact. At the same time, it didn't take up space. When they measured, when they measured from wall to wall in the Holy Temple, it was 10 cubits in the Mishkan, in the tabernacle. In the Holy Temple later, it's going to be double. In the tabernacle, let's assume it's 10 cubits. In the middle of that room, there's a 2.5 cubit ark. If you measure from this side to the wall and this side to the wall, you get 5 and 5. What happened to the 2.5? Somehow it disappeared. It's been viewed a triangle. So this is the concept of what? That the space of the Aron has no space. And the Rebbe explains in deep depth in many places. Here he only alludes to it in a footnote. That therein lies the presence of the Shekhinah. Because where is Hashem? Not in the space of limitation, not in the space of infinity. He's not limited to either. He is what he wants to be, and therefore you want to find Hashem in the opposites. Something's beyond space, it takes up no space. And within space. The ark has to have a space, and the space is not measurable. And the same thing is here in this Sicha. The daily offering. It's daily, it has no time, and that's its time. You might say every mitzvah is like that. Every mitzvah has rules and regs. You have to do the Shabbos licht at 4:22, and you have to have the mezuzah exactly so many lines, and the details of every single law, the milchiks, the fleishiks, how hot, how cold. It's totally limited, and yet this is the will of Hashem, which is totally infinite. So infinity and finitude coming together, that's where you see Hashem's presence, and the context of this Sicha, we're seeing it in the daily offering. It's infinity, but it's touching down in the finite and permeating it. It's beyond time and time. The Rebbe concludes that there's a lesson to us. The lesson to us is the highest level of service of Hashem is that every day to you is equal. There's one way of serving Hashem. I serve Hashem, but there's certain days when I'm on. Certain days I feel it. Maybe it's Yom Kippur, maybe it's Shabbos, maybe it's Pesach, maybe it's Purim, or maybe I'm just having a day when I'm inspired. But then there's a higher level of serving Hashem, which comes through the fact that somebody is completely committed. He's committed because of the will of Hashem, and therefore he's only doing it for Hashem. It's not about his own experience, and therefore there's no difference. If you're a committed servant to Hashem, it makes no difference. It's Yom Kippur or it's a regular Tuesday. His commitment, his service to Hashem is like daily. It's tamid. It's consistent. It's very hard to do this. Typically, you would think it's a very high level. Who's consistent? Who can be consistent? A person fluctuates. But I think the Rebbe is empowering us to do it not because of high levels that I have such love for Hashem that I'm always on. I'm lucky I have ever any love for Hashem. What it means is, like the Rebbe spells out in the Sicha, but everybody can be committed to do it because he's a servant of Hashem. He wants to do the will of Hashem. And on that level, there's no difference if it's Yom Kippur or it's Tuesday morning. Hashem wants it, yes, boom, I'm in. So on that simple level, in a way, it touches the highest level. It's the highest level, the daily offering, which perhaps is why the daily Shekhinah doesn't make it into Yom Kippur. It's a regular weekday. But in a sense, it's greater because a regular weekday shows, but Hashem is everywhere. Just like this person in his service, he is committed to Hashem every day the same. Because it's not about his experience and his motivation. It's about Hashem's desire. And therefore, it is considered, what happens is when a person serves Hashem in this way, without change. Again, the Rebbe knows that we're moody people and we have our ups and downs, but we can be committed that there's no change. There's going to be a consistency. And why? Because I'm doing it for Hashem. I'm touching the greatest infinity. I'm touching the level of Hashem, as the verse says, Ani Hashem, Ani Havai Lo Shanisi. Hashem never changes. That concept of infinity, we're able to mirror it by creating consistency in our daily thing. And then says the Rebbe, what happens? As Rashi says, every day becomes a holiday. Every day becomes the day. Every day becomes holy. This is a preparation for Mashiach when we say that it's a day which is completely Shabbos. The concept is not that when Mashiach comes every day, it becomes holy, becomes Shabbos. Every weekday is permeated with holiness, even as it remains a weekday. Because what is the concept? What is the concept that Mashiach comes, it's one big Shabbos, because the whole idea of Mashiach is to bring Hashem to the lowest space. Not to elevate the world to Shabbos, but every day becomes Shabbosdik. because the whole world will feel Hashem's presence. And therefore, if Hashem has a will, every day we're in. And therefore, every day is permeated with that holiness, the concept of Dida B'Tachtayim, and it's permeated. I want to just conclude by adding something that's not in the Sicha, but it's from another Sicha and it relates. I feel like it's a sweet close to a fantastic Sicha. First of all, there's a well-known Shalos Tshuvas, a responsa that was asked of the Radvaz, one of the great Paiskim. What happened was there was a person who was in prison, a Jew. And because he was in prison, it was difficult for him to observe all the mitzvahs. They didn't have Aleph Institute, and he was in prison. He couldn't do mitzvahs. And they told him they're giving him a right to leave for 1 day of freedom. And on that day, he can do the mitzvahs. So they asked the Radvaz, what day should he pick? Thinking that he'll pick Yom Kippur, or he'll pick Purim, he'll pick Simchas Torah, he'll pick Pesach. He'll pick a day where the mitzvahs are very, very important. The Radvaz ruled he should pick the very next day. So I think this mirrors the theme of the Sicha, that every day is a day. The Rebbe says it in a Yom Yom. A tag is a tag, every day is a day. Every day is a day than today. But then there's also a beautiful Sicha, where the Rebbe talks about the constant offerings, the Tmidim. There's 2 daily offerings. And the Rebbe says that's brought down in Sfarim, that the 2 daily offerings are hinted in the Shulchan Aruch. If you open up the Code of Jewish Law, Shulchan Aruch, the first section is called the Book of Orach Chaim, day-to-day life. So the Code of Jewish Law begins and ends from the Ramah, and in the beginning of the Code of Jewish Law, from the Beis Yosef, from the Shulchan Aruch, Code of Jewish Law, that the first entry uses a verse with the word Tamid, Shivisi Hashem L'Negdi Tamid. That's how the code opens up. I should always see Hashem watching over me. And the last line, I believe this is from the Ramah. The last line of that code of Orach Chaim is Tov Lev Mishta Tamid. Somebody who has a good heart is always happy. He's always partying. It's the laws of Purim Katan. So the Rebbe said this, brought in Svarim. You want to know what's the 2 constants? We don't have the daily offerings today. I mean, we do it with Shachris and Mincha, but it's brought down in Svarim, says the Rebbe. I don't remember where he quotes it from. I'm not even sure he brings a source. But it's brought down in Svarim that these 2 daily offerings, the 2 constants, they're a reference, and they're referenced in the beginning and the end of the Code of Jewish Law in the section of Orach Chaim, daily life. The beginning, he quotes a verse, Tamid, I should always remember Hashem is before me. And the end verse is, Tov Lev Mishta Tamid, I should always be happy. We see the connection between the 2. If a person feels Hashem's presence, he's always happy. And therefore, that becomes the reference of the daily offerings. So the Rebbe says in the Sicha of Purim Katan, that Purim Katan is greater than all the holidays. Why? And I'm reading this Sicha's message into the Purim Katan Sicha, or vice versa. Purim Katan? Who ever heard of it? You have Yom Kippur, you have Shabbos, you have Pesach. Yeah, those are wonderful. But those are days of special holy revelations and mitzvahs. That's not yet Tamid. That doesn't yet bring out the concept that Hashem's light is infinite and always. It's Yom Kippur, it's Pesach, it's Purim, it's Simchas Torah. Purim Katan. First of all, it's a rabbinic holiday to begin with. So it's not a holy day in the sense of the biblical. And even in rabbinic holidays, it's Purim Katan. There's no observances. There's nothing to do to observe it. It's just a day. It's a regular Tuesday. And here the Code of Jewish Law concludes and says, you want to know Purim Katan? A good-hearted person, a person who knows Hashem's presence is with him, he's always happy. Because the day-to-day is supposed to be permeated with this truism of Hashem's presence. And therefore, it permeates a regular day. Similarly, that perhaps mirrors, even though it's not quoted in the footnotes, but that's perhaps mirrored the message here. Not just Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh and festivals, they bring tremendous light to the world. But what brings the true infinite light, and that infinite light permeates our world, it's the daily offerings. And in our lingo, it means being committed to Hashem like a servant. This is what he wants. This is what he's going to get in the consistent basis. This is touching infinity, and yet bringing it down into our own lives, which is a taste of Mashiach, Dira B'Tachtayim.